Review. Review. Review.
Hey everyone, how's it going? Decius here with another video. And in this video, I'm going to be doing a book review on Rhythm of War, Book 4 of the Stormlight Archive. And to begin, I want to start with a little bit of a preface of my own story coming into reading this book. I finished Oathbringer. Really, I finished all three of the prior Stormlight Archive series in early 2025. And I finished Oathbringer in May of 2025. So it's been about 6 months, and I really enjoyed that book. I love the world building. I loved Dalinar's character development and his backstory, and I felt like it really fleshed out the world more versus the first two books felt kind of isolated in their narratives, especially in their settings. So going into Rhythm of War, I kind of heard online, and I don't usually like to let internet opinions affect my own opinion, especially before reading a book. So I felt like I was already going in with more of a negative mindset because I feel like everyone that I was watching on book 2 was saying that Rhythm of War was like their lowest ranked book. I don't know, that kind of rubbed off on me when I started reading this book, because I was kind of going in with that mindset of this isn't going to be as good as the first three. And I feel like in reading this book, I really internalized and I really realized how much internet opinion, especially on books, affects how I read and what I think about stories. And sorry if you hear any little noises, my cat's playing on the ground next to me. I started the book and I already felt kind of alienated from it. I didn't really like the year time jump. And that's my own personal opinion when it comes to reading epic fantasy or fantasy in general. When I'm reading a continued plot, especially with Stormlight books, how long they are and how it really doesn't even skip a beat. You really see into these characters moment by moment. So I'm thinking the year time jump really dissuaded me from really getting into it, because I took a really long break from reading Stormlight and Rhythm of War specifically. Once I started this book, it really took me up to about this point in the year for me to kind of read the rest of the story. So I took about a 6-month break pretty much from Stormlight. And I felt kind of, as I said, a little bit disenfranchised with Stormlight, with kind of Brandon Sanderson's prose. I started reading the Dune series and Frank Herbert, and even James Islington's Will of the Many. I'm reading Strength of the Few right now. It just came out. And I don't know, a ton of other books. I was kind of just reading anything but Brandon Sanderson. Coming back into it, I really did want to finish Rhythm of War. I really wanted to see it through, and I finished it. And honestly, I thought it was a really good book. TLDR, it was a good book, but yeah, I don't think it's my favorite Stormlight, but it's definitely, I thought it was cathartic. I said that really weird, cathartic. I thought it was very cathartic in the end, and I thought the character development was generally good for most of the characters in the book. But anyways, let's deep dive right into it. I don't want this video to be too long.
Oh, my sweet summer child.
Usually when I do book reviews, I ramble for over a half hour, but I want this to be a little bit more concise and edited. So I will begin with talking about Kaladin's plot. So we really see him in the beginning near Hearthstone, and there's this whole battle between the Radiance and the Fused, which are the main antagonists in this book, which are the singers and these souls from pretty much hell. It's called Braze, that are thousands of years old and eternal beings they have abilities, and they go inside, take over the bodies as hosts of people and take away their soul pretty much and kill them. So there's a lot of moral grayness in these characters, and you really want to see like what is going on here. Are these guys just black and white evil, or is there a little bit more to the picture? And I really appreciate that in this book they really did flesh out what are the Fused motives, especially with Raboniel, Leshwi, and all of these like Heavenly One characters. But that's besides the point. For Kaladin's plotline, we see that he has not the most healthiest relationship with his father, Lirin, in particular. Lirin definitely resents Kaladin for not being a surgeon, and almost to a comical degree. I thought it was really silly how stubborn Lirin was throughout the entire book, and I thought it was kind of as a external show to protect Kaladin, to kind of keep him emotionally distanced, but I didn't really understand that either. Throughout the entire book, Lirin really does not like Kaladin, it seems. He's resenting constantly that he's a soldier and that he kills people and he's not saving everyone. And I understand that to an extent, but I think a big part about Brandon Sanderson's characters that I've been beginning to notice is they'll have character archetypes and attributes to them, and most of the time they don't really go outside of the bounds of those unless it is a formulaic character development throughout the story. And that's something I have kind of grown to dislike about his writing style, but at the same time, for me, I just kind of have to suspend my disbelief and accept that a lot of his character arcs and character actions are very formulaic and fit within his rigid structure of how he creates these stories. And I think the stories are excellent and well designed, but I think sometimes they lack a little bit of nuance and some of that grayness of humanity. I think kind of connecting that with Kaladin's abilities in this book, he is at his pinnacle of power near the beginning at least, and all of most of the Bridge 4 crew and tons of other people in Urethru are gaining these radiant abilities. So they're all, especially the Windrunners, they're flying around, they're invincible, they get their arm chopped off and then it grows back instantly. I think that really threw me off. I'm like, what am I reading here? Am I reading like a Marvel movie? It just kind of felt like it really lost the groundedness, and I don't really care to read all of these epic battles that feel like there aren't any stakes, but they're pretty colors and cool action. It felt kind of flashy in the beginning, and that, for my own opinion, that kind of threw me off. I like when it's really rough and it's like when you're in the character's mind and anything could happen. That's why I love the Song of Ice and Fire series. I just read Blade itself as well, and it has a similar feel to that, and I really enjoy that rugged kind of heavy feel to it, and this book doesn't really have that in the beginning, but I really like that as the story progresses, these characters begin to lose their abilities because they are kind of being held captive, and you kind of have to see how these characters actually live without them. And they've been having their /God mode in Minecraft going. They've been in creative mode for like a book, and now they kind of have to live in survival mode for a bit. And I like that shit. I like when it feels like there's some stakes and they actually have to think about the consequences of things, and they don't just fly and just do all of these crazy things.
They fly now? They fly now!
So that's why I did like a lot of the middle part of Rhythm of War, which was, albeit very slow, but I really liked the slowness, and I liked that we kind of sat with Kaladin throughout these moments. The ending for Kaladin's plotline was awesome. It was very cathartic, like jumping off the tower to save his dad and swearing to the fourth ideal, and like now he has Spren like plot armor pretty much. Shard plate is basically plot armor. So you know Kaladin's not going anywhere, and maybe he dies and when in truth, who knows, but I don't think he's gonna die. By the end of the book, you're kind of back to that feeling of they're invincible again, but the stakes are definitely higher there. And I think as an emotional point in the book, like the most emotional gut punch for me in reading Rhythm of War was when Teft died. I definitely saw it coming in his final chapter, like just the way he was talking. I knew at least his Spren was gonna die because they were really bringing it up, Mosh and like Moash, or however you say his name, and now he has the dagger and he's out for blood. But I did not think that Mosh would kill his Spren and then kill Teft. I actually cried when I was reading that. Any book where I am brought to tears, I respect the book, because just reading paper and crying by looking at paper and words on the paper, like for me that is magic. That is infusing these emotions and imbuing it within this physical frame where I can experience just internally and actually have real, genuine feelings and emotions. Like that is amazing to me. And so I definitely rank this book pretty high because of that emotional gut punch for me. But moving on to Shallan and Adelin's story. I know I'm probably saying these character names way different than you would say them, or maybe similar. Team Shallan. I know it's Shallan in the audiobooks, but I really just, when I started reading the book, I just said Shallan, and I'm stubborn, so I just say Shallan. I really did not like their plot line in this story. I really don't care for Shallan and Adelin's relationship that much. And I just felt frustrated reading every single Shallan chapter. A big thing for me, controversial take, I don't know, I really don't like the split personalities of Shallan. Like, I get it for her plot and her covering up her trauma and compartmentalizing different parts of herself and kind of escaping within and kind of becoming an embodiment of a different personality to disassociate from yourself. I completely get it psychologically, and as a story, I even get it too. But the way he writes it feels very clunky, and I just can't really connect with the character that much when I'm reading it. Especially with like Vale and Radiant, and they kept mentioning Formless and Shallan, like all these different parts of her. I just found it was a yawn fest for me. Controversial take, I did not really enjoy that part of the book. Even Adolin, like I just feel like Adolin doesn't really have that much of a personality anymore. Like I feel like in book 1 he was kind of a dick, but like he seemed to have more of like a grounded nature to him. And even in Words of Radiance, when he decided to like be imprisoned with Kaladin, and you could see his more vulnerable side showing up. But I just feel like Adolin has become more of a caricature of Adolin than actually Adolin. I'm sure it's a good development if you look at it mechanically, but I just didn't, in my personal opinion, I did not like reading those chapters. I don't really care for Shadesmar. I think it's kind of gimmicky, and it feels just like there's something else to write about, like just some other dimension, because that's what you do, I guess, to expand the world. But like focus more on the physical world, like focus more on all of these different cultures. He really did in Oathbringer. He was talking about Thaylen City and Azir and going with the Ardents in different parts of the continent, and Shinovar. I want to see more Shinovar. I think we're going to get that in book 5. But like focus on the world that's already there. Like don't create a half-baked alternate dimension world that feels kind of flat. It felt distracting as well for me. Like when I'm reading chapters that are not in Shadesmar, I'm constantly thinking about the implications of what that means in the parallel of Shadesmar, and I feel like you can kind of come up with a lot of little plot holes and inconsistencies. It kind of distracted me, and I like that at the same time that there's a little bit more depth and you can kind of look at the world in a different lens through a different dimension. But I don't know, I just didn't really find the Spren all that interesting. The Honor Spren were just really obnoxious and stubborn, and I didn't really care for them. I liked Kellic, the herald that was there in Lasting Integrity. I liked the idea of Lasting Integrity, how it's like a vertical rectangular building, but on each side it has its own plane of gravity, and so there's like 4 different sides, and then the sky looking outward is basically if you're on the ground and you're looking, like there's just an opening at the end of the city. I thought that was pretty cool to imagine. I did enjoy that part about Shadesmar the most in this book, but overall, not my favorite part of the book. Moving on to Dalinar and Jasna. I say Jasna. I think in the audiobook they say Yasna, but for me I say Jasna. But anyway, for Dalinar and Jasna's storyline, I liked that there was a little bit of world building in it. They're in the like country of Amul, I think that's how you'd pronounce it. And there's kind of a battle sequence between their army and the Fused, and it's sort of a diversion. They kind of have like a C plot, I feel like, in the book, and it's basically just a distraction from the fact that they're actually capturing Urethru, and there's this whole plot line where they don't know about it, and so they're in this whole battle. It was decent, but definitely not the highlight of the book. I feel like, especially for the Jasna chapters where you kind of see her POV, she's trying to branch out and be more of a military commander and more of a strategic like battlefield like commander, like being in the war and trying to kill people and stuff. I understand that for Jasna as a character, that she's curious and she wants to be good at everything, but at the same time I didn't feel that mystique around the character in reading her own POVs. I think Jasna is a really good supporting character within the POV of another character. I think she really stands out and she has more of an air of mystery and this sense of authority, and she knows everything and she doesn't let on everything that she really kind of knows internally. And you really see that in Way of Kings with Shalin and Jasna's relationship with each other. But then when you kind of are able to look behind the curtain into Jasna's mind in her chapters, it's like kind of boring. Like I just found the character not that interesting internally, and honestly very pretentious. Not pretentious in like a good way where like, oh yeah, she is really smart, but like definitely kind of cocky about it. But like the way she thinks about things sometimes is just, it kind of seems naive in a sense that doesn't feel like Jasna, where she's talking about, oh, wit sees me on an intellectual basis and not just physical and emotional. Like, he understands the intellectual side of me, which is superior. Like, it's like, is she really thinking this stuff? I just feel like it's really like straightforward and like there isn't a lot of depth there. But then again, maybe I just had the wrong impression of her from the other books. And I mean, she hasn't really been in a lot of the books since Way of Kings pretty much. So yeah, maybe I was just misjudging her and I just didn't find her POV that interesting. And there was only a couple of them, luckily. Moving on to Navani. Navani, I really did like her story. I liked her breaking down the science of the rhythms and especially the little fabrial contraptions of like the flying machine and the gauntlet, and how she really plays small. She doesn't see herself as a scholar. And that's something that's kind of subtle at first, but then you really get to see throughout the book like, oh yeah, this is just like a personality trait. Like, she cannot see herself as smart or intellectual or on the level of scholars. Like, she has definitely looked down on herself for a long time. Her whole life, pretty much, it seems like. You kind of see the catharsis of her beginning to understand her own strengths and believe in herself and embody what she's always been good at, that she is worthy of being who she wants to be. And that's just some good messaging. I love the dynamic between her and Raboniel. Raboniel is kind of like a tragic villain, kind of an anti-hero. She sacrifices herself at the end, which I liked that, and I really liked a lot of their conversations with each other. I thought they were probably the highlight of the middle section of the book for me, is when they are kind of having these moral debates about the war and just about how Raboniel doesn't really have a choice, and in a better world, this isn't what she'd really want to do, but the necessity of things kind of brought this upon the world and this battle to unfold. And I really liked that. I thought Navani's plotline was probably my favorite because of the fact that it wasn't all action, and you really got to see into her mind and her interests. Wow, like when I think about it, for Jasna, like Navani is always thinking Jasna's the genius. Like, she is, ever since she was a kid, I couldn't even be a match with her. Like, she was like God right away. But Jasna has a lot more of a nuanced and compelling POV, and I feel like there's a lot more going on in her awareness and her inner thoughts versus Jasna. So I find, yeah, I think that is interesting to create the parallels, because there's definitely a lot of parallels. Jasna got a lot of who she is from Navani. Navani doesn't recognize that. I think that's really interesting, because it really shows how many blind spots we have when we view ourselves. We can over-grandiose ourselves and think we're the best, or on the other scale, we can really belittle ourselves and not allow ourselves to reach the potential that we already are able to reach. I think that's a big theme in the book, and a theme that I really enjoyed. Moving on, Venli and Ashonai, the Fused. I did like the Fused chapters. When I saw them, I was actually engaged. I think I saw a lot of kind of criticism online. I see my little cat right in the corner there. Ah. I liked it. I liked the cultural distinctions of their characters. You can really see the differences in how they communicate and the rhythms and what makes them tick, and some of the comical nature of the characters too, especially like the pursuer, just like a comically evil dude, but he's actually a coward pretty much. Yeah, I really liked Navani's plotline of trying to become a better person. For my notes there, I kind of can see where parts dragged on. I can see that some of the parts are kind of slow and redundant. I enjoyed the concepts of rhythms tying in with the planet of Roshar, and it kind of relates to just in the real world frequencies and energy or vibes, if you want to look at it like that. Just we're all kind of living on an energetic basis of our lifestyles and music in general and our thoughts. It all kind of ties in together to kind of create the song of life. That was one of my favorite parts of the book, is talking about the rhythms and what they really represent and how they can connect with each other and create new tones. And I love that shit. I love that world building so much. And especially the memory chapters going in with like Ishonai. The ending of Ishonai was honestly, it was beautiful, and it was very bittersweet because she died. Like, we all know she died at the end of book 2. But you kind of get to see that the Storm Father allowed her to encompass the storm right before she died. So she was able to have a very free moment of exploration where she was able to have a little bit of bliss before encountering death and the other side of that, which is a complete mystery. Thought those characters together were definitely compelling. I did find Venli wanting to be a better person. I found it compelling for the most part, but it did feel somewhat one-dimensional. It felt kind of forced in a bit. And she's like a bondsmith now, pretty much. She's like really powerful. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I think she's a bondsmith, but she threw like a void sprint now. But I liked it. Overall, I kind of want to wrap up the main plot of the video and just kind of go over the overall thoughts of the book, just in essence, and some of my questions that I have as well. So overall, when I put my notes, I rank this book probably in last place among the first 4 Stormlight books, but I still really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I picked it up. I'm glad that I DNF'd it for a little bit, but I'm glad I picked it back up and finished it, because especially it's just worth it for the ending. And I know that's not the best reason to read something, is just because the ending is good. It should be the whole way around, but I did find most of the book to be relatively fun to read. Journey before destination, as they say. Some of the questions I have: what the fuck is going on with the Ghostbloods? Like, what is happening here with Marays and everything? When they were first introduced in Words of Radiance with the Shallan chapters, I found them pretty corny and kind of like a comic book, like weekend cartoon villain outlaw kind of thing. But they seem to really be upping the ante for who these Ghostbloods are in this book. That's another thing in this book. There's a lot more Cosmere exploration and a lot more of tie-ins. And I've only read the first Mistborn trilogy. That's my only other experience in the Cosmere. But I can see connections to that. I can see there's some beginnings of the chapters, those little subheaders. Some of them were written by Sazed, and that's pretty awesome. Just kind of the whole essence of the 16 shards, and there's, cultivation, honor, odium. And then in the first Mistborn trilogy, you got preservation and ruin. So those are all kind of the godheads that control the Cosmere. And that's only 5 of them, so there's 11 others. So a lot of mystery there. And I really like that Odium, his whole motivation was to make Roshar into like a super trained army to conquer the rest of the Cosmere. Like these Nordic powerful surge binders, like this full army of battle-hardened, like devout, almighty warriors flying through space and going to like the Mistborn world, going to all the Allomancers and all the other planets that I don't even know about, and just like invading them. Like that would be a sick book. I would read it in a heartbeat. That sounds so awesome. But connecting with the Ghostbloods again, we see that Marays reveals that the Ghostbloods are super powerful. Like, man, I'm just like a pawn. There's a guy above me and from another planet, and there's a guy from the other planet that's above him in another planet or some shit like that. Like he only reveals himself as an avatar. There's a lot going on. So, and I think Brandon Sanderson is writing a book right now called The Ghostbloods. So it's going to be a whole book talking about that, which will be interesting to read. I might read it one day. We shall see. My final, I wouldn't even say it's a question, but just it left me wanting more, is the ending with Wit. I love Wit. I love Hoyd, and his real name is like Catharnium. It's not Catharnium, but it's something like that. It starts with a C. We see that Odium is Taravangian now. He's still trying to pretend that he's Reyes, the person that was Odium before. And Wit kind of catches on to that, and he's suspicious of Odium when they're having a conversation. I mean, if you've read the book, you already know this, but it's fun to talk about. Then the conversation kind of restarts uninhibited, mid-paragraph. The same lines are being said, only slightly different. Wit is saying pretty much the same responses, but you can see that he has a little bit of variety, even if it's the same sort of sentences. And that's a really good character attribute that I like about Wit. Brandon is really good at writing Wit as this all-encompassing character. And he has this whole monologue about suspending your disbelief and following how stories are all lies, and you just buy into it. And it's a collective agreement between the reader and the author. Very meta. I love that shit. But then you see that Odium reverses time and has this conversation again and doesn't say something that reveals any suspicion for Wit. And it's very unsettling, and that's how the book ends. It left me feeling very unsettled, like, oof, this, even being able to hurt Wit, and he was threatening Wit to destroy his memories, his breaths, or whatever those are. I feel like if Wit is afraid, we should be afraid. I think that's kind of how it goes. Wit has been nonchalant this whole series. Like, he's kind of like a fly in the wall, it seems like, in all this shit, and he's kind of just having fun. But now we see that even Wit could get hurt in this process. So that changes the game a bit. And I want to end the video there. I think that is, I still babbled on for like a half hour, but those are my thoughts on the book. I really enjoyed it. And I think I want to, like, when I'm making these book reviews, if you're still watching this, thanks for watching. Feel free to hit the like button, subscribe. I like making book reviews, gaming videos, MMOs. For me, making a book review is very nice because it allows me to decompress my thoughts on a book. I think it's really easy for, like, when you finish a book, to just go to the next book or do something else. And you don't really think about the book anymore. But for, like, making a video or just writing about a book that you just read, I think it's a good way to kind of cement your thoughts on it and cement it in your memory more, and maybe explore it a bit more. It's a nice little, I watch another booktuber, I can't think of his name, but he is the best. He's a guy from Europe, a bald fellow, like, he's just super wholesome and awesome. If I remember, I'll link him in the description. But he's saying, for him, he doesn't usually remember a lot of the books he reads. Neither do I. Like, you don't really remember all the exact details after you finish a book, especially after months or years. And making book reviews is kind of like a little bit of a journal entry for you, so you can see the books that you've read and what you thought about them at that time. So if you ever read them again, you can look back and see, oh, I thought about it this way back then, and now I think about it this way now. Or just to see what you thought about something. I just think it's such a cool medium, and if you love reading books, I would definitely recommend, like, just make a YouTube video talking about it if you want to. Like, not saying you have to do this, but if you, like, try it out, see how it goes. Like, it doesn't matter if no one watches it or anything. It's just, like, I feel like it's a nice, it's a feel-good thing. It's just to talk about it and share it and to put it out there. So anyways, that is my final message. Did you read Rhythm of War? I hope you did, because if you didn't, you're spoiled now. I'm sorry. But what did you think about Rhythm of War? I'd love to hear in the comments. Who was your favorite character in the book? Who is your least favorite? Do you agree or do you disagree with my opinions? I'm open to discussion. I'm open to debate, and I will debate. So anyways, take care, everyone. Peace.